Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the ninth module for the CCI Clearance Preparedness Program. The next and final module will be on November 5th from 1 to 2. We will have a guest speaker who will be announced at a later date. You all have received the calendar invite and you will receive 3 reminders prior to the module. Please sign in to the Zoom modules with your first and last name. If you are still not doing this request, there might be someone else with the same name as you, or you might be coming up as iPhone, and we want to ensure that you receive full attendance credit. Individuals who did not register and received links from friends will also not receive a badge because we don't have your email, so we can't give you a badge. And you just did not complete the full registration process. We have a few of these. As always, please reach out to me if you have any questions regarding attendance and module logistics. I will turn this over to Dr. Eric Berger to get started on today's module and introduce our guest speaker, Kevin Woods, Director of GuidePoint Security.
Thank you, Kendall, and thank you, Kevin, for joining us today, and as well the students to listen to it. Should be a very interesting conversation. Just a reminder to the students, if you have any questions, just type them into the Q&A box, and hopefully we'll be able to get to them. Kevin, so you're prepared. They usually come up with some good ones, so we'll see how that goes. But to set the stage here, just to introduce Kevin. So he's the director of the GuidePoint Security University. He's been in cyber for about 10 years. He's done red teaming, incident response, threat intelligence, and started out serving in the U.S. Army as a cyber network defense manager. He has lots of certifications and bachelor's and master's from Worcester Polytech and an MBA from Johns Hopkins. So with that, I'll pass it to you, Kevin, if you'd like to have some opening remarks.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for having me and thanks for the introduction. I can go ahead and share my screen. Appreciate everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Appreciate everyone hopping on today and yeah, thank you. Thank you again for having me. So excited to be here. Talk a little bit about the agenda. I do want to leave some time for Q&A at the end, but as Dr. Berger said, if you have any questions, use the Q&A. I'm going to do my best to try and um, monitor that or the chat as well. So please use that. But hey, yeah, the agenda for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey into the federal cleared landscape. Tell you a little bit about the clearance process. I'm sure you've heard about it, so maybe we can go through that quickly. Talk a little bit about where to find and what sort of cleared jobs exist. I know I struggled with the contracting side, so I did want to go through some contracting terms and a little bit of the process there, and then talk to you about like the lifestyle impact of being a federal employee or having a federal security clearance, right? And then I'll shamelessly plug my own company, GuidePoint Security, in there at the end as well. All right, let's get started. Let's jump right in and yeah, as you heard, I'm Kevin Wood. So I run the GuidePoint Security University program at GuidePoint Security, a cybersecurity consulting firm, a DoD contractor. I first got started in the cleared space, classified space, if you will, when I joined the Army. I got into military intelligence, ended up getting my TSSCI that took about a year to get. It was a lengthy process, and I felt like I was in the dark the whole time. So hopefully I can shed some light to all of you if you're looking to get into the secure space here. But I also acted as a personal security officer. So part of my duties were to make sure that people were being submitted for security clearances. I was entering into JPass or DIS, if you've heard of those systems before, to request investigations for people to get security clearances. And then also on the bad side, handling some of the derogatory actions that, people did, right, that would make us review whether or not they deserve the security clearance anymore, right? So that was kind of an interesting experience getting to see the security clearances from that side. Then I switched into cyber operations, been doing that for about the last 10 years or so, when I was still in the Army and I was doing mostly incident response, things kind of across, purple teaming, red teaming, cyber threat intelligence, right? But I was using my TSSCI to work on classified networks. So that was me actively working in the cyberspace, in secure facilities. And yeah, when I got out of the military, I did an internship with GuidePoint Security. they hired me on to be a security engineer for the federal contracts they were on. And then a few years ago, I became the director of GuidePoint Security University. So I'm mostly a remote worker now, but I still do go on site in some of the DC areas to work with different tools and different technologies in the field. So still putting my clearance to use, just not as much as I was in the past. And so I'm hoping I can show you a little bit about what it's like from the personnel security side, from the people who are submitting for the clearances, a little bit of what it's like to have a clearance and work in the cyberspace. And then also now I'm a hiring manager. I place a lot of people with clearances. I hire people with clearances. And so what we look for as an employer of people that have security clearances, right? All right. Let's uh let's continue on. I'm sure you've heard about the process before, but I'll go through this anyway, right? From my insights and what I've seen. Overall, when it comes to the security clearances, the first thing you need is a company or an organization to basically sponsor you. Usually, you'll have what's called an FSO, facilities security officer, sometimes a personnel security, depending on the organization that's running it. But basically, they'll submit within their software, within DIS or JPass, they'll submit to start and request an investigation for you to get a security clearance. Once that happens, you'll be given login information to get into Equip or eApp to go in and complete your standard Form 86, which is everyone's favorite, the SF86. Um, I have more on that too, I'll get to in a slide here. But yeah, the SF86 basically hundreds of questions about the past 10 years of your life and providing lots of references. I know it trips up a lot of people, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. Once you complete your SF86, usually that's a trigger for DCSA, the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, to go and actually conduct an investigation. So they're going to interview you, they're going to interview your references, they're going to do all sorts of background checks, credit checks on you to verify that everything you've told them is correct and accurate, right? Once they have completed their investigation, it moves into the adjudication process. And so this is a different team that evaluates all the notes from the investigators, everything you've submitted in your SF86, and ultimately makes a determination as to whether or not to grant you a security clearance. Right. All right. So I mentioned before that it starts with that FSO. They have to submit you for a clearance. I know I get a lot of questions about which clearance type do I need. Um, and really, if we're talking about cybersecurity, we're mostly seeing secret and top secret, right? Now, there is a confidential security clearance that's pretty rare, so I'm going to kind of pass over that for right now, right? And really, the biggest differences between secret and top secret is the investigation type that's being conducted and also the level of access, right? That makes sense. With top secret, the FSO or personnel security officer will often submit you for an SCI as well. So you'll often see TS SCI. The SCI, what that does is it allows you to get into sensitive compartmentalized information. SCI stands for gets into a SCIF, get a polygraph, get read on to special access programs. Most of the time, if you're being submitted for a top secret, you're also being submitted for the SCI caveat as well, because it's the same investigation, right? But when you're being submitted for a secret, you're being looked at for a T3 investigation. Top secret is T5 investigation. The difference there is that they spend more time and dive deeper into your background and your different references if you have a T5 investigation. And so that's going to take a little bit longer. Right now, what we're seeing is about 3 to 6 months to obtain a secret, 6 to 18 months to obtain top secret. These vary drastically. I've seen clearances take 2 years. I've seen clearances come through in a few weeks, right? It depends on what organization you're with, who's sponsoring you, if you have priority. If you have a ton of foreign contacts or you've done a ton of foreign travel, that could slow it down. So there's a lot of different variants that goes in here. And so you shouldn't read too much into it if a clearance is taken too long or if you haven't heard back in a while, right? And this is where it can be tricky when we're talking to employers that are looking for people to come in and work in the federal space, because they don't know if you don't have a clearance and they're going to sponsor you for a clearance, it could take years, to get that, right? Ideally not. Ideally you're getting a top secret in, 6 months or so. But they could spend a lot of time and effort to invest in you, to have to wait that long before you're actually able to go work on site, right? Now, with a secret clearance, usually those are good for 10 years. That investigation is good for 10 years before you have to be reinvestigated. A top secret, the reinvestigation happens at 5 years. OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, they handle all of our clearances, and they actually made this 6 years for a while because they're so backed up. I believe they're back to 5 years. Um, but yeah, in general, right, your top secret is basically renewed, you could say, every 5 years or so. You can see there on the slide that, like, hey, access to different jobs, right? When you need secret versus top secret. Ultimately, your sponsoring company is going to determine that for you. It's not like you can say, hey, I want a top secret when you're really only working on secret information, right? But if you're looking to get into the intelligence community, if you're looking to do cyber operations in the federal government, chances are you're going to need a top secret SCI. A lot of times we're dealing with networks that are specifically focused on some of these special access programs, right? And so you're going to have to get an SCI clearance and then also be read on to a special access program. Overall, from a lifestyle and reporting standpoint, I haven't seen much of a difference between secret and top secret. Like I said, getting the investigation going, that's usually the biggest difference here. But a lot of the obligations to report are the same, whether it be secret or top secret. The government's going to monitor you a little bit more closely if you have a TSSCI, but you should be reporting, and we'll go through that too in a little bit here. All right. So I mentioned the SF-86. Hopefully you've heard of this before, but yeah, this is the form that's the bane of everyone's existence while they're trying to get a security clearance. Takes forever. I can drop some stuff in the chat here too if you want to take a look. The SF-86, it's a standard form that's in the name, so you can go look at um, the entire thing. I guess I can't chat with everyone, but I could drop it to the host if they're able to share it. Um, you can just Google SF-86 and you can actually find this form so you know exactly what you're going to be filling out when you go for a security clearance. And really the big thing here is just don't lie, right? Where I saw as a personnel security officer, I dealt with a lot of people who were submitting for clearances and they were struggling through the SF-86, right? The biggest thing is people would lie, they'd omit, they'd pretend like some negative activity, they'd minimize it, right? Like it didn't happen. I feel those people, they tend to know when they're intentionally lying or being, deceitful on their SF-86, right? And so you probably know if you're doing that. I think where the honest people struggle with the SF-86 is that they rush through things. They think they can fill it all out in a day or two, and then they don't provide enough information, or they forget to add something, or it asks you for an address from 10 years ago and you can't remember what apartment building that you were in. And so you just say, hey, I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, right? And that's just going to delay the entire process when you're submitting this form. You can't just put NA, you can't list incomplete addresses. You can't say, hey, I don't have a reference for when I was living there. It's not going to fly, right? They're going to have you restart the process, or they might say, hey, no, we're not giving you a clearance. And so I think that's where the majority of people who mess up the SF-86, it's not intentional. It's just that they're not putting enough information into it, right? And you'll see this time and time again. Just be honest, be thorough with your answers. You are going to be asked to list out a lot of references. I think I had 30 different people I had to put down on my SF-86 when I first submitted it. One for every location I lived in, one for every job I had, the dates of employment for all those different jobs, right? You have to verify all that stuff. And I lived in a lot of different areas, so I had to have a different reference for every one of those different locations. When it comes to references, too, you'll see here in this bottom bullet point, it say don't contact references beforehand. They tell you not to do that to coordinate stories. Can't ask them to lie, obviously, right? That should go without saying. That's a felony by both you and by them if you're asking them to lie on a federal form here. You can contact your references though and say, hey, I'm using you as a reference. You might be contacted by somebody just to verify stuff about me. Just leave it at that, right? Don't ask them to verify specific dates. Don't ask them to verify you're at this location. Just, hey, somebody might contact you. That's okay. Leave it there, right? Now, under the do column with SF86, I think we talked about most of this, right? Be honest, be thorough, review for mistakes. I have seen some get kicked back just from grammatical mistakes, right? If you aren't the best at communicating in written form, it's okay to ask your FSO for help in doing that. Oftentimes, the FSO is going to review your SF86 before you fully submit it. Um, but I've actually seen grammatical mistakes just cause ambiguity, and then the investigator not like it, and essentially we'd have to restart the entire process. But as soon as you know that you're going to be entered for a security clearance, you're going to be filling out this form, you can start collecting documentation. There's nothing to say you can't, right? As I said, you can just Google this form and know what sort of answers or questions you're going to have to be answering there. So you can start collecting up, hey, when did I work at this job? What was the date that I started, I ended? Do I have my boss's information? If I went to school, when did I start, end? If I was living in a dorm, which dorm was it? What's the actual address for that dorm? What floor was I on? They're going to ask you all sort of questions like that. So you can start collecting that now so you don't have to rush through it and make mistakes later. They always used to tell us, and we used to tell everyone, save frequently. The old equip was how we submitted before. They used to crash all the time. I've heard EAP is better, but hey, it's a government system, so save frequently, right? Cool. So that's the SF86. Um, After you submit that, right, that's what kicks off the investigation, and that's when they start interviewing you and your references as well. How many they interview, that's whether or not you're secret versus top secret, gets into that T5 versus T3 investigation. All right. Now, once you have a clearance or once you're looking for federally cleared jobs, um, really I kind of package these into two different pools. All right. So first you have your government employees. Those are people that are essentially earning a paycheck from the government, right? That's where I got started. I was in the military. A lot of military people work with classified systems or on classified operations. And so the military sponsored me to get my security clearance. We worked alongside DoD civilians kind of for the same reasons, right? They have security clearances, but you might see Department of State, the intelligence community, Department of Homeland Security, CIA, DIA, NSA, FBI, right? Those are all government agencies, and they will provide their employees with security clearances. Usually, these are salaried positions, and you have very structured career paths with promotions. Typically, you get benefits and retirement if you're working directly for the government. It can be a really nice way to get started. I'm glad I joined the military. It helped me get that clearance and get training and really set me up for success on the civilian side. But, if you're a government employee, there's a chance you might make a little less money than what you do on the commercial side. But again, it gets into that, balancing act there with different benefits that you have as a government employee, and tend to get more job security. I know people are looking at that a little differently nowadays, but at least for me, right, I knew I always had a job there while I was still in the military, and that's still the case for a lot of these IC agencies as well. The nice thing about joining a government organization is you typically don't need a clearance when you first start applying to the jobs. They're going to sponsor you, they're going to get you a clearance, and usually they have priority for particularly the intelligence community agencies that are out there, right? And so most people that are looking for entry-level roles, a government organization can be really nice because they'll find a way to get you a clearance. The other pool of companies, organizations that do have cleared positions are federal contractors. And so what that is, it's basically, yeah, private companies that win contracts to perform government work, right? And so the government can't do everything on its own, it doesn't create a whole lot of new technology. And so oftentimes they're going to have to reach out to industry to hire people to do R&D or to provide different services, right? That's where GuidePoint Security, we're a government or a federal contractor, so we go and provide cybersecurity engineering for a lot of these different intel community organizations that are out there. And you'll see the big names listed here, some of the other federal contractors, Booz Allen, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, right? There's a bunch of them that are out there. And really the employment style for those federal contractors it can look a couple different ways, right? You can be a 1099 contractor, which basically means that you're employed by the hour, and you're paid by the hour. So you typically don't have benefits. It's just, hey, we're going to pay you, $50 an hour, and then you submit how many hours you work that week, and they can directly charge the government for that, and they write you a paycheck for that amount, right? You don't get any benefits out of that. Or you can be a W-2 employee, and that means that you're salaried for that actual company. And you get benefits as well, right? At GuidePoint Security, we largely operate as hiring people as W-2 employees. So we salary them, they have benefits, and that way, if a federal contract or like a government shutdown happens, right? You're still employed, you're still making money during that time. But also, if you change contracts or if a contract isn't renewed, not as big of an issue if you're a W-2 employee because you're still fully employed by that company, right? Whereas 1099 contractors are usually picked up specifically for that contract. And so if it goes belly up or if it's not renewed, if option years aren't picked up, you could be without a job there. Um, right. And so that's kind of the game we play on the contracting side. Your employment really does ultimately depend on the company's ability to win and retain government contracts. And so a lot of these big government, federal contractors here, yeah, they typically have contracts that are being renewed all the time, and like Booz Allen constantly has contracts, right? GuidePoint Security, we constantly have contracts, so it's less of a concern for some of these bigger companies. But if you're looking at some of these smaller federal contractors, some of them rely on one or two contracts, and if that contract falls through for whatever reason, you're back to looking for a job, essentially. Right. But you might get paid a lot more to take on that risk of job security. Not to scare anyone from doing that, right? It can be very lucrative, and a lot of these contracts are for 5, 6, 7 years at a time, and so you know that you're going to be employed for quite a period of time there. The thing with federal contractors, though, is sometimes, especially mid and senior level, or if you're trying to demand a higher salary, they're going to want you to have a clearance already. Now, some of these bigger companies like Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics, if you're looking for an entry level role, um, they might take a chance on you and actually provide you a security clearance, right? Or help you get a security clearance. I know at GuidePoint, we look at people, particularly like in their senior year, going into junior, senior year of college. Hey, we want to capture you then so we can get you a contingent offer to sign with us, maybe come work with us part-time. And so we allow a bit of time, ramp up period, where you can be getting your TSSCI, and we can help you get that and then place you directly into an entry level role on a federal contract once you graduate from school, right? But if you're graduating in a month and you're looking for a cleared position on a federal contract, it could be tough, right? Because there is, again, that length of period to get that clearance. Like I said, some companies they'll be willing to wait and to sponsor for the right people. But sometimes it can be a little bit harder as well, right? And so that's where, hey, if you're looking for something more immediate to get a clearance and work in a cleared space more immediately, the government agency can be a nice route to go as well. Cool. All right. I don't see anything in the Q&A, but please stop me if anything does come through. I'll also drop here into the chat. There's a couple good sites to start looking for cleared positions too. You'll probably hear about USA Jobs and clearancejobs.com are both a couple good sites. USA Jobs can help you find positions or find roles in companies that would be willing to sponsor you for a clearance. I'd also say too, especially at GuidePoint, but I think a lot of organizations if you have a secret and you're looking to move up to a top secret, typically that's an easier, faster process for us. And so we'll be more likely to take a risk on you if you have to elevate a clearance versus not having anything to begin with. All right. So I somewhat mentioned the polygraph, right? If you're getting into the top secret SCI space, sometimes if we're dealing with very classified and segmented information, we'll be asked to get a polygraph. I've had to get a CI poly myself, a counterintelligence poly. That's much more common. That's probably the most common polygraph out there on the federal clearance side. Um, Really, that focuses on like your loyalty to the US. I didn't think the questions were too bad or too hard. It's mostly, hey, have you ever thought of overthrowing the government? Do you have an allegiance to foreign entities? Stuff like that, right? And then questions about just how do you currently handle classified information? So usually you're not being put in for a polygraph or you aren't being put in for a polygraph until after you have a security clearance. Um, and who needs these? Usually employees working in IC agencies or conducting R&D in certain sectors, right? Usually these special access programs. See a question come in. Does having an interim clearance allow you to move to other companies? Do you have to wait for it to be fully awarded before taking another job? Yeah, typically you have to be fully awarded before taking another job, right? So it depends, right, on the organization. If we're talking federal contractors, you might have like two different federal contractors that are working on the exact same contract. And if that's the case, you were already put in for an interim for that particular building, for that particular contract, you're okay. But if you're saying, hey, I'm going to move to an entirely different contract with a different agency in a different building, you're going to have to restart the process. Hopefully that answers your question there, Ted. Interims are, that's a good point too. I didn't mention interim clearances. We have offered or put in for interim TSSCI clearances. You can get them a lot faster, and that gets you in the building. That's another option that federal contractors have and that agencies also have. If they really want to get you high priority, we need to get you in the building, get you working right away. They can submit for an interim. Um, which basically gets you in the building, gets you read on to certain things, but you can't go fully on and get your special access programs, get into polygraphs. So it is a little bit limited, but most of the time we can get you in and actually working on some of these different systems there. All right, with the polys, yeah, you need your clearance first, and then you need a reason to have a polygraph, right? Your FSO can't just send you to go get a poly, and because they want to, right? You have to be aligned to actually take on a role in a special access program or whatever that agency happens to be. Um, like us dealing with cybersecurity engineering, we deal with networks that are at all levels, right? And so if we have a contract with the CIA to go work on their networks, just to get into the building, we need a poly sort of deal, right? Not necessarily because we'll be exposed to that level of information, but we are exposed to the network that is handling that information, right? And so that's why in the cybersecurity space, we're often dealing with these SCI level um, clear facilities that we're in, right? But like I said, the CI poly, it's more common when we talk about polygraphs. I didn't think it was too bad. Couple hours there. I'll talk to you about the experience on the next slide. Um, Results can be pass, fail, or inconclusive. Obviously, you want a pass. That permits you to move forward with the access. A fail means that they basically determine you are lying to them. That's not good, right? More than likely, though, fail is pretty rare. Usually, what we see is inconclusive. And that's, hey, we don't know if they're lying, not lying, and typically we're not moving forward with that access level, but you can still do your other SCI stuff that you're approved to do. The other type of poly is a full scope. So this asks all the same questions of the CI poly, but it also gets into very personal questions about your life. They're looking basically for anything that someone could blackmail you for, right? So it gets into drug usage, criminal activity, finances, sexual activity. They're looking for, again, reasons they could blackmail you. They're also looking at your level of integrity, your commitment to the US government. So they even want to know about, do you lie in your personal life? Are you cheating on your spouse? Do you have hidden activities? Have you ever perjured yourself? Are you committing theft? So they'll ask you a lot of questions around that. It can be a pretty lengthy experience. People with full scopes are pretty rare. out there. And so as like a hiring manager, we have contracts that do require a full scope just to get into the building. And usually those people can demand higher salaries, right? Because they are hard to find. Um, but again, you can't just go out there and get a full scope on your own. You need to be assigned to a an actual project. But usually once you get an FS, a full scope poly, it can serve you well for a while there. All right. Yeah, this is just a picture I found online, obviously, but looks pretty similar to when I went through my poly. They had me hooked up to all sorts of things. I seem to remember the person doing the interview telling me that they're checking 17 different bodily metrics on me. I don't know if that was accurate or not. I got a 4 or 5 different things measured here, but yeah, they check your breathing. They check your blood pressure with like the arm cuff you get at the doctor's. They even have things they put on your fingertips to measure your sweat and your heart rate. And I didn't notice at the time, but I guess there was motion detection built into the seat as well, right? And so basically, what they're trying to do is just um, establish a baseline and then see if you're moving away from that baseline, right? And so for me, I walked in and they had me fill out a questionnaire. These are the questions we're going to ask you. Basically, a lot of yes, no type of deal. And then if I had to explain something, I would write out the explanation on that form. And then they would go and set up baseline questions for me. So I got hooked up. They asked me, like, hey, is your name Kevin Woods? I'd say yes. And that's that baseline for, yeah, I'm telling the truth. And then they'd ask me to lie about something. For me, it was, are the lights on in the room? They told me to lie. Lights were on. I said no. And now they've established that, hey, this is what it looks like when I lie, sort of deal. And so they had a few questions like that. Every answer I gave is a single word answer. They want to get down to yes, no type of questions. They don't want you rambling on because it's harder to interpret those results. But it was pretty straightforward. I think it took a couple hours. It wasn't too bad. I don't think it's anything to be scared of. And took I think a week or two before I got my results, but it was a while ago. It was an interesting experience though, for sure. All right. Any questions? Again, I'll be monitoring the chat if people do have questions. Great. I know.
Sorry, I think there actually is one, but I think it's in the chat. I see one that says, does having an interim clearance allow you to move to other companies, or do you have to wait for it to be fully awarded before taking another job? Oh, that's already answered. I'm sorry.
Yep,
Just
all
wanted to make
good.
sure. I didn't want it to be missed.
Yeah, no problem. All good there. Um, cool. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about, I know it's not directly related to clearances, but once I got into the federal sector and started dealing with cleared, particularly cybersecurity work, right? As a federal contractor, I was exposed to a lot of new terms and processes, and really I had no idea what was going on. And many of you probably don't have to necessarily deal with it at this point, but I think it's important to know some of these different terms. If you hear like prime and sub, what does that actually mean? Because the federal contracting process can be long. And sometimes you'll talk to a hiring company and they'll say, hey, yeah, we'll hire you, but contingent upon us winning this contract award. That's pretty common. And so you should have an idea of what that award process looks like. And like I said, I was in the dark about it when I first got started. So I'll run you through this real quick. All government contracts, you can find all of them on sam.gov, which I'll put into the chat here. Anyone can go in and look up all federal contracts that are being solicited or have been awarded. You can see those there. But basically, how this works is an agency will say, "Hey, we have a need for something," right? So let's say the DoD all of a sudden determines it wants AI in its drones, right? And the DoD might say, "Hey, we don't know if that capability exists. Does it exist at all? We don't have the people to dedicate for R&D and to build this out for us right now, and we don't know if the capability exists." So what they'll do is they'll submit an RFI, a request for information that goes out to all of the industry and essentially says, "Hey, does this capability exist if we wanted to put AI?" cyber analytics, incident response into our drones. Can we do it? And different organizations out there in industry can respond and say, hey, yes, you can do it. Hey, no, you can't do it. Or maybe that's not available right now, but if you gave us enough funding, we could give it to you in a year, sort of deal. RFI is purely optional and really just for the government to learn if a capability does exist. If the agency determines that, hey, we actually do want this capability, we have this need and we want this capability, what they can do is then put a formal request in the form of a solicitation. And so that's where if you go to sam.gov, you'll see open solicitations out there right now. And it'll say, hey, we're looking for this drone AI analytics capability. Send us your proposals. And so then different companies out there, federal contractors, right? They can go and submit, hey, we can build that for you. It's going to cost this much. We'll give you this many people, and they'll list it out. There's different ways that the government can solicit. You can have a request for a proposal, request for quote, invitation for bid, and those just make the request a little different, right, in terms of how much flexibility um, is out there for the actual companies that are applying for this award, essentially, right? So you can look further into them. Basically, the request for a proposal has the most versatility, right? They want the company to handle it however they would. A request for a quote mostly gets into whatever's the cheapest is what the government's going to actually purchase, right? But all these companies, they submit their proposals, the government evaluates them. Sometimes there's demos or further conversations to determine what is the contractor we want to use to go build out this drone AI analytics for us, or to take a known product and to put it into our drone for these AI capabilities. Um, and then they'll award, right? They'll choose who they want to award the contract to. And whatever company is awarded that contract is known as the prime, right? The prime contractor. The prime is the one that's ultimately responsible for delivery compliance with the terms. So again, think General Dynamics, Booz Allen, those are your typical prime contractors. But the prime might not be able to perform 100% of the tasks that are laid out in that award. And so oftentimes a prime is going to take on one, two, three, four different subcontractors to help them actually provide these services to the government. And so the prime might say, hey, we actually don't have people to go train these drone operators on how to use the AI. And so they might turn to a subcontractor like GuidePoint Security and say, hey, can you come in and help them learn how to engineer this thing? Right. And so that's how, if you hear the terms prime and sub, that's how those essentially work. Sometimes the prime will also purchase through a third party, an original equipment manufacturer, an actual product or software that they're going to be using. So that they might say, hey, we want to add in Cisco's Splunk as well, right? That's a piece of software that they can add in. And what they can do is the prime can still own the contract and go and purchase that license from an OEM or from a software provider and then still provide it to the government. That OEM has to be compliant with government regulations. You can't just go purchase something from North Korea, right, and throw it in. So that OEM has to have products that are compliant with federal regulations. So that's kind of the contracting terms and process and what the award looks like. And so again, if you go and you're talking to hiring managers, sometimes it's even good to look and see who is that contractor, what are they going for? And you can look it up in sam.gov. And maybe that's a conversation for you when you get into interviews is, hey, I noticed that you're going after this one capability at this one agency. Do you think like how is that going to shape, moving forward what the forecast is for how we're delivering this sort of thing? It can be a good conversation to get started. All right. I offer that again because I know that was super confusing to me when I was getting out of the government agencies and moving into the contracting side. So let's talk lifestyle of a federally cleared individual here. Um, Yeah, I mean, you probably know there's continuous monitoring when you have a security clearance. It's given to you in expected that 24/7 you're acting on the best behalf of the government, right? Um, sure, you're under constant scrutiny. I will say that I don't go about my day-to-day worrying about being under constant scrutiny. I don't notice that the government's monitoring my stuff, right? Some people don't like it though. They don't like that the government is checking their financial records, constantly checking for criminal activity. But really, for me, I don't even notice that it's happening. I know there has been more of a monitoring of social media presence. Again, for me, that hasn't been a huge ordeal, but I know quite a few people, right? They have more of a presence on social media. Not to say you can't do that, but you can't actively be talking anti-government, right? Or trying to incite violence. I think things largely we shouldn't be doing anyway, but they are monitoring for that sort of stuff nowadays too, right? Again, the continuous monitoring, I don't think most people with clearances have to, they don't deal with that too much or worry about that too much. I think where a lot of people struggle with the lifestyle for, having a security clearance is the professional conduct standards. One, we're often working on site in a classified facility. You don't have access to your phone. You can't get on social media, can't check personal email, and so you're segmented from the rest of the world when you're on site and working in a classified space. That can take some getting used to. It can be frustrating at times too, especially if families and stuff like that, right? That maybe you're trying to communicate with them. It can be difficult, or you have to actually plan that into your schedule where, hey, I'm going to go out to my car at lunch and take a phone call with my family because you can't do it, right? During the middle of the day. The other thing is once you're done with work for the day, you obviously can't take it with you, right? So you can't work long hours outside of the building. If you're working long hours or late, you got to do it in the building itself. You also can't talk about your work with friends and family. I know that's something people struggle with, right? You want to go home and gripe or complain about your work. Can't really do it, right? I can't go home and say, hey, I can't believe they're using default passwords on this agency's router, right? You can't do anything like that. So some people struggle with that and not being able to talk about their job with family and friends. Another area, right, you have to avoid drug usage, high levels of debt. The number one reason for treason in this country is financial. So finances are looked at very carefully, and you can't associate with known criminals as well. Another thing that's kind of annoying, not a deal breaker, right? But mandatory reporting obligations. I just took a trip to St. Martin this past summer. They have a French and a Dutch side of that island, but I had to report before I left that I was leaving the country. I was going to a foreign country. And then when I returned, I had to also sit down and report that, yep, I went to this foreign country. No, nobody was trying to influence me or sell me government property or anything like that, right? A minor annoyance there, but you still have to do it, right? If you have a security clearance, you got to be able to report these different things, foreign travel being a big one. But yeah, any sort of financial issues, any sort of criminal charges, we had to deal, unfortunately, with like DUIs and stuff like that. People have to report that, and we have to get it in the system. Also, any changes in mental health conditions. Um, we'll talk about that actually on the next slide here. And then family changes. So if you have a dependent, you get married, have a new spouse, get divorced, that stuff has to be reported as well. And actually, with foreign travel, there's certain countries you just cannot travel to. Um, Most of those countries, I don't think many of us are traveling to anyway. You can Google it there. Department of State will have information on those. But it certainly is a different lifestyle having a security clearance. I largely live a very similar life. You can't be getting very inebriated and spouting out stuff about work, like that sort of stuff, right? Can't use drugs, can't associate with criminals. For most people, it's not a huge lifestyle change, but for some people, it can be difficult if they do a lot of foreign travel as well. So just some things to talk about. I think the biggest thing though is that you're kind of away from the outside world at times when you're working in some of these cleared facilities. All right. Some of the frequently asked questions that I've gotten over the years, as a personnel security officer, as a hiring manager, right? I used to get this one, these first two all the time when people were trying to apply for their clearances. Hey, can I get a security clearance if I have some sort of thing on my criminal record, as in a speeding ticket, a parking ticket, stuff like that. And it's really not an issue. I had speeding tickets on. I used to have a lead foot, I guess. I had speeding tickets when I went for my TSSCI. Not a problem because I paid them, right? I wasn't delinquent on them. I didn't miss court dates. And I disclosed it on my SF-86. That's the biggest thing. If you disclose a lot of these things, they're not really issues. But they want you to be honest there. The second bullet point, obviously, marijuana has became legal in a lot of different states. Federally, it is still a controlled substance, and so you should not be doing it if you're looking for a security clearance or if you have a security clearance. It is not allowed. Um, so I'll leave it at that, right? If you have done it before, disclose it on your SF-86. It's not a complete deal breaker, but you shouldn't be doing that regularly, or you shouldn't be doing it at all if you're looking for a security clearance. Ted, I see you have another question here for foreign travel with a mandatory notice of all foreign activities. Before you go, is this something that is reported to your company or is it a separate entity? Yeah, good question, Ted. So your facility clearance officer or facility security officer or personnel security officer, whoever your point of contact happens to be that manages your clearances, they'll take that information. So they have a pretty standardized reporting format that they use that they upload to their own system. But that is somebody who actually exists at your company that you'll talk to. Yep. So like I talked to my FSO. I just said, hey, I'm leaving the country. They said, here you go, fill out this, filled it out, sent it in. Pretty easy to do. Um, Third bullet point here, a lot of stuff around mental health that we got questions about. Government's come a long way in this regard, and now it's encouraged to go seek out mental health professionals. You're not going to be denied a security clearance if you've talked to a mental health professional or if you have mental health medication. Again, disclose it. They just want to make sure that you're open and honest about these things. Yes, there are several mental health conditions that can prevent you from getting a clearance, like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, right? But 9 times out of 10, if you're dealing with anxiety, depression, you can seek out help. It's not an issue at all with getting a security clearance. Biggest thing, just disclose it, right? Last three bullet points are more from the hiring side that I've seen. I've had people tell me they're paying for their clearance. Now, if somebody's asking you for a paycheck or for pay to get you a security clearance, I think twice that might be a scam. You shouldn't be paying for your own security clearance. The company should be just submitting it, and typically it's not even a cost to the company, right? That's kind of a myth there. Do I need a job offer before I get a clearance? Can I apply on my own? You can't apply for a clearance on your own, no. You need a sponsoring company. And typically, yeah, that means a job offer of some sort, usually a contingent offer that you will sign, stating that you will, in fact, work for that company on that particular federal contract. And that's why they're submitting you for the security clearance. And can I get a security clearance for a remote work role? Unlikely, I would say. We also get this quite a bit. Usually, if you need a security clearance, that means you have to work on classified work, and that's going to have to be done in person. You can't really do that remotely. You have to go on site and work on classified networks or on classified documentation. You could look at a hybrid work role for sure, where you're on site a couple times a week. That comes down to the organization, but I wouldn't expect to get a security clearance if you're in a fully remote environment because you're not actually able to work on anything classified. All right. That's most of my stuff on the clearance side. I'll do some stuff on GuidePoint Security here for anyone interested, and then leave a few minutes for Q&A. But yeah, as I said, I'm from GuidePoint Security. We're a cybersecurity consulting firm. We deal with organizations across all of the DoD, the intelligence community, as well as on the commercial side, financial, healthcare industries tend to be some of our bigger ones. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're trying to help our organizations understand and manage their risk. I think that's a lot of what cybersecurity comes down to, is not necessarily always putting technical resources in place, but how do we understand overall what is the risk to our company? Um, yeah, we've been around since 2011. We are all throughout the country on the commercial side. Very fast-growing company, about 1,200 employees right now. A couple things that I think make us stand out as a company is one, we have about 60% technical resources. That's very hard to find. That means that about 60% of our employees have some sort of technical background, a technical certification, right? It's not just sales and marketing people. That number is very high, um, but pretty cool, right? That I can have a technical conversation with pretty much anyone in my company. We also work with over 700 vendor partners. You can see AWS, Microsoft being two companies I'm sure you've heard of that we have partnership agreements with, but 700 others as well. So CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, Splunk, IBM, you name it, chances are we work with them. And that means that we can go implement those tools directly into classified networks. It also means that I get training and certifications through those different tools, right? So that's one fun way to get certifications. But it's awesome being able to work with all those different vendors and learn all those different tools and technologies. Caesar, I see your question here. Uh, it's no, that won't impact it. Again, just make sure you disclose it. What you just told me here, that is pretty much what you can put on your SF-86. And if they need more information, they can. It's possible they would ask for the healthcare facility that diagnosed you, but having a diagnosis, even if you weren't misdiagnosed, that wouldn't be an issue for security clearances. Just again, be honest, disclose it. That should not preclude you from getting a security clearance. Yeah, good question. All right. Some of the federal roles at GuidePoint Security, I mentioned we're across the US. That's mostly on the commercial side. So we're about 75% commercial, private sector. Those jobs are all remote. The other 25% are federal positions on government contracts. We work with most of the intelligence community in almost every branch of the DoD. We are missing one right now. But yeah, we have 7 or 8 sites now around Northern Virginia, DC area. We do have a very large site in St. Louis, and then we have a couple job offerings that come up in Colorado Springs and Tampa for some contracts that are there. You can find all of our federal roles if you go to our careers page, guidepointsecurity.com/careers, um, and check those out. I think we're up to 24 open positions right now on the federal side alone and I'll drop those into the chat there. If you want to get to our federal page itself, it's guidepointsecurity.com/government solutions is our federal branch. And what we do is, again, unlike some other contractors, we hire federal employees full time, W-2 employees. You're not specific to one contract. Yes, we're going to put you on a contract and allow you to bill against the government. But if that contract, like I said, goes belly up, you're not out in the street. We're trying to find you in the next contract or we're getting you some commercial work, right? And so it's a little bit better on this type of feel right from a job security standpoint. And that's what I really liked about GuidePoint Security is I wasn't completely tied to just one contract and that was it. I will say with federal roles, yeah, you must be able to go on site in one of these different locations. So most of the companies remote, but our federal people are not. And just about, we have a couple jobs that require a secret clearance, but I'd say most of them are TS SEI. Yeah, and Kendall, I can give you these slides afterwards too if you want to share them out. But here's the different cybersecurity security services that we have, right? So we cover everything in the cyberspace from pen testing to cloud security, data security, you name it. We're able to provide it. And then the program I actually started up in 2021, and now the director of is called GuidePoint Security University. So we bring in people from colleges or transitioning out of military or career changers who are looking to get into cybersecurity. And we bring them through different training programs, including fellowships and internships, and help them get hands-on technical experience. Because we know if you're trying to get started in cybersecurity, it can be really tough to get that first entry-level job since everybody wants 7 years of experience in a CISP somehow, which is impossible. So we were trying to find a way to help people bridge that gap and get their first job in the industry. And so we created GuidePoint Security University. And through our different training programs where we do pay you for your time as you come through an internship or fellowship, or sometimes we'll bring in people as full-time employees who are waiting to get their clearance, to get on a federal contract, and we'll train you on some of these different vendor tools. So you can go get certified and get 4 certifications in Splunk or 3 in Palo Alto, right? And immediately be able to deliver in the government space or in the private sector as well. We have both commercial and federal experiences there through GuidePoint University. Um, right now, GuidePoint University is, we have our spring application is currently open for our spring internship program. So I can drop that here in the chat as well. Um, there we go. So if you are interested in an internship that can be on a commercial or federal side, you can apply there. That's directly through our program. We have hired several people through that program to get into our federal side. So we'll help them get clearances. I'd say a large majority do end up on the commercial side though. And that internship, it's entirely remote. And like I said, we pay you for your time there as you go through and actually work with some of our different teams to get hands-on experience and learn some of the vendor tools. But all right. Um, Caesar, see your question. Oh, I think that's for the CCI team. All right, I think that is all I have. I spoke quickly and a lot, so if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. I'll share some additional information in here as well if you want to follow me on LinkedIn. If you want email for my program, GPSU, you can find it there too. But yeah, any questions? Anything
Yeah,
I
we,
can
we do
answer?
have a question in the Q&A box.
Oh, okay.
And basically, an interesting, they filled out the SF-84. So they've got
Public
a
trust.
public trust.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Um, I I don't think it helps necessarily. It doesn't hurt, right? I haven't seen it like make anything faster when applying for a secret clearance. You're as an employer, I might say like, hey, yeah, there's a higher likelihood that this person gets a clearance, but it's going to be an entirely new investigation. So unfortunately, you are kind of starting from scratch with a secret clearance there. Hopefully that answers that question.
At least you will have collected some of the data.
Yeah,
Like, where
yeah,
did you live? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. At least too that yeah, just put it put it in a document, put it somewhere. It shouldn't go without use for sure.
That's right. That's right. Well, any other questions as we're rounding up the top? Oh, actually, this is a good one. Do you see the
Yeah.
questions?
Yeah, so available for non-US citizens to access. Yes, it is. GPSU, we've brought in several people that are not US residents before. They're going to be working on the commercial side. We can't have you working in the federal sector. But yeah, we brought in a few, and actually, one just got his H-1B. He's a full-time employee now with us, so we are super pumped about that. But yeah, you can apply if you're not a U.S. citizen to GPSU. I don't know if I cover that with security clearances. You do need to be a U.S. citizen if you are going to get a security clearance. You cannot have dual citizenship. We've had to deal with that before, and basically, you have to renounce your other citizenship, which isn't a problem when it comes to getting to your security clearance, but not everyone wants to do that, right? That can be really tough to do. But I have seen that done. But yeah, you got to be a U.S. citizen for a security clearance, not to work at GuidePoint. Do you ever need to get a public trust if you already have a? I wouldn't think so, but I think, I'm not positive, Ted. I'm not positive on that. I haven't done much in the public trust arena. Not sure, Dr. Berger, if you know that answer or not,
Yeah,
but yeah.
I had my public trust first, but not because it was one the other. It was one job, then another job. So they
Yeah,
didn't ask. At the other one, though, they don't ask for public trust again. Believe me, you're answering all the questions on the 84 on the 86.
yeah, yeah. Does it require a degree or can anyone apply for GuidePoint Security University? Anyone can apply. I'd say probably 2/3 or so of the people we bring into GuidePoint University have a degree. We certainly have people that have never gone to college. We've taken people straight out of high school. I've dealt with plenty of military vets who didn't get a degree, or they're currently working on their degree as well. But no, it's not a requirement for us there. All right, Caesar, do you guys have marketing internships or only cybersecurity? We'll have marketing internships. They're rare, once or twice a year. Most of our internships are cybersecurity focused, Caesar. All right. Anything else?
Oh, great. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today and coming down. And like I said, we often get some good questions here. So
Yeah, some tough
uh,
ones, like you said. So,
that's right. That's
right
right.
on. Great. No, we
I mean,
hope
I
this
had
was,
one with our FSO sitting next to me, and we were like, wow, we never thought about that.
yeah, it's interesting. I love the federal space. I think anyone that's interested, especially in cybersecurity, we can't get enough good people into the federal world that have cybersecurity knowledge or skill sets. It's definitely a need for our government right now, and yeah, hopefully you all seriously consider federal work, especially in the cyber side. But hey, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure. I love working with the CCI group. We always bring in people and some great interns that we've had over the years as well. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, you've been a great partner on the workforce development side on the internship. So thank you. Kendall, speaking of CCI, any great words of wisdom?
Not really, except for thank you all for coming and thank you again, Kevin, for speaking today. This was really great. We really appreciate your ongoing partnership with us. Obviously, to the students, always look out for CCI opportunities. Sign up for our newsletter or reach out to me to see if there are any upcoming CCI opportunities. Just as a reminder, the next and final module will be on November 5th from 1 to 2. So look out for the reminders and we look forward to seeing you then. And I will have badge information for that final module. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, bye.
Thanks, everyone.